First of all, I would like to start out with the definition of homework. Homework can be defined to be any work that a student is given by a teacher outside of the classroom. And the main issue that arises, or the question that arises, is does homework really lead to academic success? Does the presence of homework in the classroom actually help students graduate at a higher rate? Does it improve standardized test scores? So those are the kind of questions we're going to be looking at with this presentation. There's a lot of research to suggest that it does, and I believe that it does, but we'll look at that research and then we'll analyze it from a different perspective, from a critic's perspective. And so some of the positive aspects of homework we'll look at. 3/4 of all 13 to 17-year-olds have homework on a daily basis, and 37% of all 17-year-olds are doing homework at least an hour or more every day. And so we see that homework is universal in nature. And I think that's important because there's no obvious law to the system yet. The system seems to be working and supporting each other. And homework tends to raise standardized test scores. The professional researcher Harris Cooper did 2 studies about homework, and there were 2 groups. He took students from classrooms who were homework-based and students from classrooms who didn't have any homework at all. And he found that the students from classrooms with homework, they did 69% better than the students who were in classrooms without homework. Cooper went on to do 50 more studies about the correlation between the amount of homework given and academic success. And what he found is that in 43 of those, there was indeed a positive correlation between the amount of homework assigned, the amount of time working on homework, and graduation rates, high standardized test scores, and better grades in the classroom. On the flip side, critics argue that homework is stressful for students and teachers. Teachers have to take time outside the classroom to grade homework, to make homework assignments, and they need to take time in class to answer any questions. And students feel that sometimes homework is just a bunch of busy work, and they neglect it. And it's just stressful for them because they want to be doing other things with their time and don't want to be confined to a certain set of problems. And also, the research is not necessarily conclusive. It doesn't do a good job of isolating the issue. There are a lot of other factors that go into academic success, like lecture quality, quality of the teacher, overall academic environment. And so when we look at the studies, they tend to be more open to interpretation because those students in those non-homework-based classrooms could have teachers who are not as good as the students in homework-based classrooms, or the lecture quality is not the same, or their overall academic environment is not as good. And so it's hard to isolate homework as the only factor for academic success, or even as an important factor. And next I'd like to talk more about the grading process. Whether or not you agree that homework is something that should be used in a classroom, you're going to have, as a teacher, you're going to have to be able to grade assignments or tests or papers that are handed back to you. And what you want to do is you want to look for the desirable traits you want to exhibit in your students and make a rubric or a grading process around that. And that's exactly what Kathleen Harper did, a professor in California. She taught her physics class, and she came up with this 4-point grading assessment that assessed her students on, one, their qualitative representation of the data, as well as their quantitative. She graded students on how well they labeled and drew their diagrams. And identifying the main concepts was a big part of her grading system. She also looked at whether or not you had the right formulas or were plugging in the numbers correctly. And then overall, if you had the right answer, she looked at that. And then she docked points for neat work. She was having trouble because the TAs were complaining that the work was too sloppy, and in order for her to clearly grade their homework and give partial credit, she wanted them to be able to convey their ideas. And overall, she had great success. The students really enjoyed it, and the TAs said that it cut the grading time in half. And so in conclusion, I agree with the positive aspects of homework. I think that since it does, the presence of homework does tend to raise standardized test scores, that it's an important part of the class. But the other side of it is it does create sometimes unnecessary stress when the homework is just busy work. And the research doesn't show that homework is the #1 cause of educational success. So critics argue that it could be used, the time in the classroom could be used elsewhere. And lastly, we're going to talk about strategic grading. It's important to establish a good rubric that rewards your students for what they do.